Hey everybody, my name is Spammals, and did you know the Titanic sank because of fire and not because of a knob-off ginormous iceberg? Stay tuned and we're going to talk about this. So, without any more stalling, let's begin! I'm not really sure how I'm going to go about doing this video. It's kind of a weird piece to do. It's mostly face to camera, but we're going to try and go through this. Now, this is all in response to a stupid fucking documentary called Titanic, the new evidence, or rather Titanic, the old evidence that's been long disputed but churned back up and consumed as fact in order to pursue their own end goals and desires. This is a stupid documentary. It's confused many people that are still getting into Titanic, and the people that already know Titanic, it's just pissed them off. Everything the documentary says, I want to take and then challenge, so I can kind of hopefully show what the documentary was bullshit, and hopefully give you confidence to believe that this whole fire theory is nothing more than a stupid theory by a desperate person trying to get money and attention. Yes, mate! Right, the beginning of the documentary itself is already over-the-top dramatic and really just getting into it, and it's just the beginning of this shitstorm of a documentary. Why did she steam at full speed into an ice field? And why did the unsinkable Titanic sink so suddenly? No evidence of an overlooked incident, crisis below decks, and even after she set sail, a crisis that would drive the ship to disaster. Why did the unsinkable ship sink so suddenly? There was nothing sudden about it. It sunk so slowly. It took, what, 2.5 hours to sink? I have had shits that was more sudden than the sinking of the Titanic, an overlooked incident. Like, I personally don't think the fire in the coal bunker was overlooked. It was featured in the inquiries, it was spoke about, and it was determined it wasn't a key factor in the sinking. It happened, it's not a secret. And this documentary tries to put across that this fire was kept on the hush-hush. It's a secret, don't tell anybody, but the ship's on fire! So this whole documentary is built off of the back of this one photo album. It has some new photographs of Titanic inside. The guy leading this is called Senan Maloney, I think that's his name. By this point, we're 3 minutes into the documentary, and they introduce Senan as not as historian or expert, but as journalist. I don't want to downgrade journalist, but there could be some very sketchy journalists out there, right? I mean, you can't trust everything you read in the paper or on the press, and here we have a journalist telling us that everything we knew about the Titanic was wrong, and that he knows the real answer because he's researched the ship for 30 years. I think that's more of a case of he's liked Titanic for 30 years. Maybe over the last couple of years, he had this thought about the fire. Who knows? So on a piece to camera, Senan goes on to explain there are aspects of this amazing saga that have never been adequately explained. Why was she going so fast when she'd been warned repeatedly of an ice field in her path? Why did she not slow down? And why did she not divert? Well, okay, to tackle these one at a time. Why was she going so fast when she'd been warned repeatedly of an ice field in her path? Well, as far as I'm aware, it was common practice at the time to continue sailing at full speed until the danger actually presents itself. They were aware of an ice field coming, but at that point in time, they weren't in it. It was absolutely fine and normal to be going at full speed. I haven't got a source to back up that claim. It's just what I remember. I should also point out at this point, I am not an expert. I am just a doofus who likes this ship and has an opinion or two. Don't take my word as, well, Spammals said it, therefore it must be true. Why did she not slow down? This is kind of answered by part one. She didn't have to slow down because she wasn't in immediate danger. They were just going about business like normal. Why did she not divert? So they're saying, why didn't she change course? Well, I haven't got a solid answer for this one. They were taking a southerly route, which was common for that time of year. There's a northern route and a southerly route. They were going southern. They had iceberg warnings saying where iceberg had been spotted. They were sticking to their course. But I assume that they thought if they ever saw a danger, they would have enough time to get around it or to stop or to, just to avoid it. So haven't got a solid answer for that one, or something. Anyway, so this documentary continues on, and the narrator says, for 2 hours after the collision, the Titanic looked like she would stay afloat well into the next day. Really? But then suddenly and inexplicably, the ship plunged beneath the waves. Something catastrophic happened. But what? Talk about overly dramatic. Let's break up that sentence. For 2 hours after the collision, the Titanic looked like she would stay afloat well into the next day. I'm going to bring up two different sources, and they both have very credible research put into them. Titanic Honor and Glory. They did a real-time sinking animation. For 2 hours after the collision, the Titanic looked like she would stay afloat well into the next day. Really? Because if you look at this picture, her bow is completely underwater. Her ass is rising out of the water. They're already launched many lifeboats by this point, and they're already, at this point, they're now on the megaphones asking boats to return to the ship because they need to fill them up a bit more. I wouldn't say by any means, oh, I'm sure this will definitely float until the next day. By this point, the watertight bulkheads are well underwater. We're only a couple minutes into the documentary, and it's already spouting bullshit. But then suddenly and inexplicitly, the ship plunged beneath the waves. Something catastrophic happened, but what? Well, the catastrophe was that it hit an iceberg. Funny story, but that happened. And then the ship took on water, causing the bow to go down. And as the bow goes down, the water spills over the bulkheads and the ship sinks. So the thing that they said kind of after 2 hours inexplicably start to plunge, well, that could have been when the water's like overtaking the bridge and that the funnel starts to collapse. And, you know, underneath that funnel is a massive hole going straight down to the uptake casings, the boiler rooms. You know, it's like a hose pipe bulging water down into the bells of the ship even faster. Like, come on! Am I not the only one going, is this not a bit weird? Oh yeah, also the second one was from Titanic Final Word. Is about 2 o'clock as well. This is the James Cameron one. You can see here the water is lapping at the base of A deck there, about to go over the bridge. The ship at this point is already 1/3 consumed of water. I mean, just come on! So we get on to the whole crucible of the documentary, the photographs. These amazing treasure troves of Tutankhamun proportion photographs that show something that will say definitively it was fire that caused the Titanic to sink. And it's this. So they're looking at 2 photographs of Titanic pretty much ready to leave Belfast. And there's this black diagonal smudge across her hull. The guy, and I quote, says, "I spotted what I thought was a strange mark on Titanic's hull. It struck me as being very odd. I thought possibly it could be a reflection from the water, but looking at the photograph in more detail, I realized it couldn't be, because the next photograph following on from there shows the same diagonal black mark, but the ship is at a different angle. She's moved." Okay, he's seen a black mark, and his immediate response of, could this be a reflection? Like, I don't know about you, but if I have a 100-year-old photograph and it's got a mark on it, I'm not going, wow, that water's really shiny. I'm going, this camera's a bit dirty or defective, or there's a smudge on the lens, or there's a bit of debris floating around, an artifact. There's so many things that come to mind first before coming to the point of, could this be a reflection? I mean, really, if they are significantly moving, you would expect that 30-foot mark to significantly change shape. I mean, you take a photo of something and then go walk significantly around to a completely different angle and try to recreate that exact same angle. Is it just me, or is this already bullshit? Let's continue. So what they're getting at is behind where that smudge is was a coal bunker, and that coal bunker was aflame. It was a raging inferno, and it damaged the hull of the ship. That's what we can see in the photographs. That smudge is the hull plating warping and deforming and just being damaged. This is where they really crank the theory into overdrive. Welcome to the conversation, the weak steel theory, which has been disproven so many times now. Titanic didn't have inferior steel. Her steel was fine. Like, they say the Board of Trade recommended this type, but Harland and Wolff went with what they wanted. Harland and Wolff are master builders. I think they know what they're doing. They're not going to fucking dick over their own ship. At this point, they assert as fact that White Star knew that their ship was made of inferior steel, that White Star knew there was a fire in Belfast, but continued to sail recklessly, putting life at danger on purpose because of the need for money and greed, because of the pressure put upon them by Cunard Line. They had to meet this deadline, otherwise they were dead. I really hope by this point, this bigger picture of how this is stupid is just growing and growing. Starting to wrap up the whole documentary in a bow, they then come to the point of they claim that there was no reason why Titanic couldn't have lasted another 2 hours. They even go on and said Thomas Andrews confirmed this, saying the ship would not sink pending bulkheads didn't fail. It's now very specifically highlighting their fire theory, and they're trying to now rope Thomas Andrews into this. They don't actually give a direct quote from Thomas Andrews. I'm pretty sure they're just making up that sentence on their own. They're trying to drive to the point of this fire was the make or break deal in this sinking. They're trying to say that had there not been a fire, that bulkhead would have been 100% intact, and that the water flooding would have flooded the compartments that were breached, but would not have gone any further, and the ship would have been afloat longer. Carpathia would have come, saved everybody. But they're saying because the fire was there, because of the weakened bulkhead and weakened hull, it caused the water spill through and to then go on to sink the ship fully. This is bullshit. It's just bullshit. So now it's time to strike the nail on the head. The breach of that watertight bulkhead between boiler rooms 5 and 6. They bring back Frederick Barrett, lead stoker, but then they use one of his testimonies against him. The doc says how lead stoker Barrett says 2 hours after striking the iceberg, something drastic changed, that the water started to flood the boiler room. He describes a torrent of water crashing through the fire-torn bulkheads. What he actually said was, I saw a wave of green foam come tearing through between the boilers. There's a difference between these two assertions. No, where Barrett is stood, there's a massive monster boiler in front of him. What he can see is literally a wall of boilers. He can see the water coming from between the boilers, because the boilers, they're on beds, there's gaps between them. He can't really see the fire-torn bulkhead, which is actually hidden behind it's in a coal bunker, so if anything, he'd be seeing the coal bunker wall, not the bulkhead. But anyway, he can see the water coming between the boilers. That's exactly what he describes. Could this be the water spilling over the top of the watertight bulkhead and starting to flood that compartment? Or could it be how, with the watertight bulkhead damaged, with a ding to the top and the bottom going forward and aft, that water passing through that has now finished filling up that coal bunker and is now starting to fill into the room, maybe in conjunction with the water spilling over the top of the bulkhead. They want to push again that this fire-torn bulkhead collapsed because of the weak steel. It collapsed and flooding commenced. Like, where it should have no longer commenced. Like, no. They are over-dramatizing, like me, this bulkhead fire damage, and they're trying to pin it on the sole thing that sank this ship. It was not. Senan, the resident journalist expert historian, steps in and he says there's a culture of cover-up within the White Star Line, looking back at all these facts. Yeah, facts. Senan believes that while aboard the Carpathia, Ismay tried to hide the firemen's accounts by having them discharged in New York, and for this they throw up a telegram where he signed it in secret as Yamzi, which is Ismay backwards. Like, oh, secret conspiracy confirmed! He's trying to sneak under the radar! Oh, it's clear sign of guilt! Well, actually, they bring this up in the inquiry. In the inquiry, Mr. Ismay says the first telegram he sent was on April 15th, which was, deeply regret, advise you Titanic sank this morning after collision with iceberg, resulting serious loss in life. Further particulars later. Now, this second Yamzi telegram wasn't until April 17th, in which he said, very important, you should hold Cedric daylight Friday for Titanic's crew. Answer, Yamzi. Now, this is actually a very, very nice thing he's doing. So Cedric was another White Star Line ship. It's in New York. He's basically saying, hold that ship. I want to make sure that the crew can actually get home again. We're not just going to abandon them in New York. So he's actually being very nice there. By the 17th, all the press are wanting to know what's going on. What's the story? It may be a smart idea to not advertise like, oh, yeah, the Cedric's going to be held on Friday. Make sure the press are there to harass all of the crew that might be returning back to England. I don't remember exactly when the inquiry was like, this is definitely happening. Hold everybody in New York. You're having an inquiry. But as far as he's aware, he's just thinking about the welfare of the crew and everyone on board. He wants to make sure people can get home. The way the documentary cuts it and presents it, it's showing this Yamzi telegram as a smoking gun. In far fact, it was a kindness. Bruce Ismay is not the villain that documentaries and movies like to portray him as. I'm kind of done at this point. I think we've successfully challenged pretty much everything this documentary's put out as fact. I leave it to yourself to come up to your own opinions. I hope this makes sense. I haven't edited this because I'm still recording this, and it was a difficult one to record. It's just face to cam and it's very fragmented, and I'm trying to keep the narrative spearheading so that you guys can follow the trail of thought. And to loop back the introduction of the whole documentary, after a century of speculation, the true story of Titanic can be told. With what? More speculation! Anyway, leave me a comment down below of your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for watching. And on that bombshell, thank you for watching. Rate, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye, everybody!